friends, I'm so excited to welcome you to my very first YouTube video. If we haven't met yet, I'm Nikki with Mrs. Rogers Cookie Co. And whether you've been to one of my cookie decorating classes before or you've grabbed one of my DIY kits, I'm so glad that you're here. Some of you may already know that I post quick little reels on Instagram to help you follow along, and I'll still be doing that, but now you can also decorate with me here on YouTube from start to finish. So if you've ever wanted to slow it down, pause, rewind, or just decorate at your own pace with the full class experience, this is the perfect place to do it. Okay, so before we get started, if you haven't already, please make sure that you've taken your cookies and your icing out of the freezer about 15 to 20 minutes before you plan on taking the class so that they're ready to go. In your little kit packets, you should have a practice sheet, a scribe, and a few extra bags in case we need to rebag our icing, as well as your little class picture. And don't forget your sprinkles and all those little marshmallows. The only other things that you'll need that aren't included in your kit are a pair of scissors and a paper towel to help keep your scribe and your icing bags clean of icing. All right, so let's jump in and have some fun decorating together. Okay, so now we're gonna kick things off with the blue icing and our egg cookie. If you haven't already, feel free to use your practice sheet to warm up a bit and get a feel for the icing, but full transparency, since this is my very first YouTube video, I totally forgot to film the practice sheet part. But don't worry, we'll walk through everything step by step and I promise that you'll do great and you're gonna have fun. So let's get to decorating. And just a reminder, you can pause in between each one of the cookies so that you can catch up. Okay, now we have our egg cookie and we have our blue icing. We're gonna cut the tip of this bag. You're just going to flatten the tip of that bag out and cut just a small piece off of the tip. And when you're holding your bag, you want to make sure that you're holding it in the palm of your hand, and you want to use your thumb and your forefinger to help keep that bag closed when you're squeezing your icing. So you're going to tap down on your cookie and lift up just a little bit, and you're just going to go slow and steady, giving even pressure around the cookie. If you find that your lines are breaking, either your hole is not cut big enough or you are giving it not enough pressure. On the flip side, if you're getting squiggly lines, you could be giving it too much pressure or your hole is not big enough as well. Okay, so now that you just moved your egg cookie out of the way, we're gonna move on to our little chick cookie. So we're gonna start by outlining the round part of the head, and then we'll add in the little feather areas up at the top. Okay, so now with our yellow bag, we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna smash that icing towards the tip of the bag and cut off a small hole. And then I'm gonna make sure that my icing bag is clean. And then you are just gonna start outlining the round part of the chicken's head. Again, just making sure that you're holding your bag in the palm of your hand and you're giving even gentle pressure. And when you get towards the end of your line, you're gonna release the pressure and tap down to complete your line. And then we're gonna start with the middle feather first. So we're gonna tap down gently, lift up, and just go around the shape. And then I'll do the two outer feathers. And remember, your outlines don't have to be perfect because they will be covered up by your icing when we actually flood the cookie. So you just wanna get them pretty close. Slide that one out of the way, and we're gonna go on to our lamb. Okay, so now that we have our lamb, we are gonna outline the lamb's face, and we are not gonna outline straight across the top of the head because we wanna leave a lot of room to put in the marshmallows for the sheep's fur. So you're gonna wanna just do a droopy line, tap down, and then finish outlining the rest of the face, making sure not to do the ears yet. We're gonna do those next with our blue. So once you do that, grab your blue, and then we are gonna outline each side of the lamb's ears. So just go slow and steady, tap that down, and then do the other side. And then once you're done with that, you can move your lamb out of the way, and we are gonna go back to our egg. So if you need to pause at any time, feel free to do that and just come back. Okay, so we're gonna flood in our egg cookie now. So you're gonna wanna flatten the tip of your bag out again, and you're gonna cut your hole just a little bit bigger. You don't wanna go super big because it'll be really hard to control your icing, but you want it to be large enough to where it flows out and your icing doesn't dry out by the time you finish flooding your cookie. So just cut that tip off and start at the edge and work your way either around, or you can go from top to bottom like I tend to usually do. But when you are using your icing bag, you are just going to give it even pressure up against the edge of that outline, and use your icing bag to kind of jiggle that icing around and help it lie flat while you're flooding your cookie. Now, while you're flooding your cookie, if you have holes in your icing, that means you're not giving it enough icing. So you want to give it a little bit more. And if you have too much icing, it will overflow over the edges. So if that does happen to you, you're just going to use your scribe, and you want to do it pretty quickly, because if you wait too long, your icing will start to crust over. But you're going to take your scribe and you're just going to rub it along the edge of your cookie. And since I've already pre-recorded this actually happens to me on my lamb cookie on its ear. So you can go forward and see what I'm talking about if you happen to have that happen with your egg. So you can pop any bubbles with your scribe. And like I said, just jiggle softly, poke your cookie and just give it a little jiggle. You don't want to jiggle it too hard, because you can jiggle that icing off the edge of your cookie, which we don't want. Then you're going to grab your sprinkles and take the little black nonpareils out. Those are going to be the eyes for your chick and your lamb. So we want to just take those out and put those on the lid, and then just sprinkle some of the sprinkles in your hand, or you can pinch them out of the cup and just sprinkle them across your cookie. You can do as much or as little as you'd like. We just need to keep some for the ears of our lamb. So once you've done that, we're going to set that cookie aside, and you can pause here if you need some extra time. Now that we're back to our chick cookie, we are going to cut the tip of that icing bag a little bit bigger. And as I went to go do this, I realized that it wasn't big enough, so I'm going to flatten out the tip of my icing bag again, and I'm going to cut it just a little bit larger. And I'm going to just start at the edge and work my way around just like I did on the egg, using my icing bag to jiggle that icing around and on top of the edge of my icing line. So remember, when you're doing this, you want your icing bag to be touching your cookie or very close to touching your cookie as you're moving it around. It's a little bit different from when we outline, where our icing bag is not touching the cookie. We want it to be pretty close, if not touching the cookie, as we do this part. So once you get that flooded in, you're going to give it a nice jiggle and pop the air bubbles that you may need to pop. Right here, I'm just pulling that icing to the edge of my outline a little bit more to get it a little bit closer. And I'm going to add the little eyeballs as soon as I pop all of the air bubbles. So I'm just going to get those gone. And the little eyes I'm just going to take, and I'm going to put them where I think that's pretty close to the picture. But these are your cookies, so if you want to make your eyes a little bit different, you can make them far apart. You can put them really close together. You can put them offset from each other. You can put them pretty high up or pretty low down. If you are going to go a little bit lower down, you just want to make sure that you have room to put your little beak on. So grab your little black sprinkles right now, and I'm just going to use them right above where I want them and kind of just drop it. And then I'll use my scribe to, if I need to move it at all, which I do with this one, I'm just going to gently push it where I want it and then leave it alone and let it set up while we go to our next cookie. Let's move back to our lamb and flood in our lamb's face. So I'm going to take my white icing and flatten the tip of my bag out again, and I'm going to cut just a little bit larger of a hole so that we can flood. I'm going to start at the corner edge of the face and just go across the top all the way on that outline. Again, my icing bag is pretty much touching my cookie, if not very close to it. I'm just using my icing bag to help jiggle that icing around so that when my cookie is fully flooded, I don't have to do too much to it. I'm laying it flat as I'm going along as much as I can. So when you're doing this, you just want to be careful that you're not squeezing too hard to where your icing overflows over the edge. And when you are done, just give your cookie a little jiggle and pull it to the edge if you needed to, like I did right there. And if you have any air bubbles, you can pop those with your scribe also. After I do this, I'm going to grab those little black nonpareils for the eyes of the lamb. And again, this is your cookie. You can put those eyes anywhere you want them to be. I'm gonna put them just like we have on the little practice picture that's in your kit. And then I'll just use my scribe to move them into position gently. Okay. And then I'm gonna set that cookie aside, and feel free to pause here. Okay, grab your marshmallows. We are gonna cut these in half for our lamb's fluffy fur. So you can cut these in half just like I'm doing, or you can cut them in half again so that your lamb has extra fluffy fur, or you can just cut them in half like I am. You could even use them whole. You just won't be able to get as many on your cookie. So go ahead and finish cutting all of those in half, and then we will move on to our next step. Moving back to our chick cookie, we are going to add in the beak. Now you can tell by looking at my cookie that it's still very wet. You can see how shiny it is. Since you guys are doing this at home, I would wait until your cookie crusts over until you put this on, but feel free to add it now or add it after your cookie dries. When I dropped mine on my cookie right here, it did not go where I wanted it to go. So I just gently used my scribe to push it into place, just like we did with the eyes when we put the eyes on. After I do this, I'm gonna flood in that center feather on the chick, and then I am going to set this cookie aside for this to crust up a little bit before we do the other two side feathers. So once you pop your air bubbles and get your icing jiggled out, you can go ahead and set this one aside, and we are going to go back to our lamb cookie. So feel free to pause here. Moving right along back to our lamb, I'm going to flood in the blue of the ears and add our sprinkles. When you are flooding in the ears right here, you want to be very careful not to jab your icing bag into the edge of the white face, because your cookies are still really wet. If you are following along in real time. If not, you can let your cookies crust over before you do these extra steps. But I'm going to add my sprinkles onto the ears. And this is the video that I was telling you about in the beginning where my icing started to overflow and I used my scribe to help fix that ear. But I don't notice it until I start flooding this part right here. And even after I had some of the marshmallows on, I noticed that it was coming off the edge. But if you look at it right now, you can slowly see those sprinkles starting to fall off the edge. But I was not paying attention. So with this icing up top, I'm not going to go all the way to the edge because that icing is a little bit looser. I'm just going to use it as glue. And as I press my marshmallows down into it, it's going to help spread that icing. If you end up with any gaps, you can just add a few more marshmallows, or you can add some of that white icing into some of the gaps if you end up seeing the cookie. But you can already see that as I'm pushing those marshmallows into that icing, it's pushing the icing out. So you should be good as long as you don't go all the way to the edge. If you do go all the way to the edge and it starts to overflow, again, you can just use your scribe and use it to scrape that icing off the edge. And this is where I notice that my icing is going over the edge. So I'm just going to lift it up and just run that right along the edge. And because the icing is still very wet, it makes it very easy for it to smooth back into itself. And then I'm going to keep going, putting on my marshmallow fluff. So again, you can do just like we did in our previous classes where we did our base layer, like we did our pot of gold with our Captain Crunch. You can do this base layer and then you can go back in and add a little bit more icing and then add some more marshmallows on top of them. Or you can just do one single layer like I'm doing here. These are your cookies, so it's completely up to you how many marshmallows you want to place on there. You could even go through with your icing and give your lamb some colored fluff on top of the marshmallows. Just keep filling that in until the top of your sheep's head is all covered up. And there, I need a little bit more icing there to put a couple more marshmallows in. And again, you should have more than enough marshmallows to do this, especially because we cut them in half. And then you have a few that you can snack on. Just gonna double check that my head is full of marshmallows, and then we are gonna move back into our chick cookie so that you can pause this video right here if you are not ready to move on. Back to our chick cookie, we are gonna flood in those 2 feathers. Again, I'm just gonna be really careful along the edges of the cookie that we have already flooded because they are still very wet unless you're waiting for your cookies to crust over. But I'm just gonna be very gentle and finish that off, and then I'm gonna jiggle that out and make sure to pop any air bubbles that I see. And once you are done with that, you have officially completed your first cookie of Bunny's Besties cookie set. You can set this one aside, and then we are gonna go back to our egg. So you can pause here. Okay, so depending on how large you cut the holes in your bags, you can use those extra bags to rebag your icing if you would like to have smaller, more detailed lines like I have here. I did rebag my icing. Again, to rebag your icing, you're just gonna cut a really big hole off of the bottom of it and squeeze it into a new bag and then tie it off. So I'm just adding my little lines here, and I know from past experience that most of you will not decorate your cookies like this. Most of you will let your creativity unleashed, and you will show me some amazing Easter eggs. Last year we had some dragons, we had bunnies. There was so many different eggs that you guys decorated, and I was just blown away. And I can't wait to see what you guys come up with this year. I hope that you guys take pictures and tag me on my Instagram page at Mrs. Rogers Cookie Co. so that I can see your super amazing sweet creations. Let's finish up our lamb cookie. The only thing left that we need to do to this is give it its little nose and its little mouth. So I'm gonna use the pink that I rebagged for my Easter egg, and I'm gonna give it a little like upside down triangle, kind of like a little squished pizza slice. And I'm gonna fill that in, being very careful because my cookie is still very wet. And then I'm gonna give it a little line for the mouth. But you can add a little happy face or eyebrows, or you can add some color to the little fluffy marshmallows. Whatever you wanna do to make this cookie yours. Thank you guys so much for taking this class with me virtually or in person. I hope you guys have an amazing holiday and have so much fun with your family and enjoy your cookies. And don't forget to take pictures and tag me on Instagram. Bye.